you today as these human things to prove to you why even though privatization is a modern privilege that virtually all developed societies are willing and want to take part in, oftentimes the long-term harms of implementation proves to you that actually it outweighs the utility of this actual imagination when it actually manifests. That proposition has to prove to us not only the final effects of privatization, but rather whether this transition to privatization will be smooth and one that all societies are able to maintain. Two main responses to challenge the idea that privatization will always occur and will always leave no harmful impact on society. Firstly, we think that oftentimes corporations are structurally disincentivized to pursue this higher quality standard because they have to replace fundings in the first place that were initially provided by the government. We know when they were put in this stage of extreme economic burdens, they'll have less money to capitalize on future higher standards of quality of resources, etc. So that removes the exclusivity of their solution on their side. But also, secondly, this idea of race to the top. If corporations do succeed, it will mean that they're financially stable, right? There are many other corporations that are not financially stable, but still have great ideas to put to the table. I mean, it all boils down to whether companies are able to survive competition and to provide resources, which often means that often what these corporations have to offer is not the best of the best. It greatly destructs all other possible potential for improvement. We see other corporations being weeded out of competition because they're financially unstable, they have lack of funding, etc. There are no state donors to ensure they succeed in the future. Which is to say, even though privatization is good, it does not prove to us why it is beneficial in all cases. The first argument here is that in hypothetical scenarios when industries do privatize, company survival rates are very low and often generate economic inequality. Assuming that proper characterization of private companies enhancing profits through improved services is true, it would also weed out the vast majority of employees in the status quo. For reasons that we give, like how the value of manual labor will drastically reduce due to things like demand of skillful engineers and entrepreneurs skyrocketing. This is the same reasons for why the race to the top mechanism that they give is structurally harmful, because it weeds out people that have actual manual benefits to bring to society. So the effect of this is that oftentimes there's unemployment because even if individuals are trained, etc., they have ulterior motives to exploit profit through poor services and financial fraud. It blocks out the spaces for actually poor people to pursue employment. It often caps on their income, and there's also less transparent labor policy to treat workers however you like because you're a privately owned company. There are unstandardized regulations that are different across all sectors. So this ununified criterion of which we base the regulation of workers, we say it's the alternative when there are standardized wage laws, etc. When you're guaranteed employment in the status quo, there are often sanitized and also scrutinized. Your rights to on-site opposition outweigh the rights you actually get under private corporations. There's also better democracy because if you're a worker on-site proposition and wants better wages, you have to fulfill the vast majority, and often that vast majority does not want to challenge this institution. They want to stay in these companies. It hinders your ability to democratically voice out your needs. Across the state, however, it reflects the general economic and universal needs of the public, and if that is not met, people often strike, right? They often protest. This is a visible pathway for change where we are able to see where to improve. Second argument on whether the quality of resources will actually improve. It is possible for us to reverse the assumption that the quality of services will exponentially increase as more and more funding is poured in. We think that oftentimes in the private sector, the minutiae fancy services, the purpose of these fancy utilities are not socially mobile, right? After the short-term appeal to the public, in which companies do obtain profits from public transportation, they have greater incentive to capitalize on fancier, more niche resources. And when they monetize such things, they costs of these services often go up, right? It blocks and oftentimes poor rural people are exceptionally excluded from convenient private transportation. Even though quality of resources does improve, it only improves for a small population of people. That is inherently inequitable by nature, as opposed to the comparative that we get, which is utilitarianism. So, second argument on the alternatives to capitalism, the trap we are willing to make on our side. The government on our side often puts social benefits above profit motive in order to appeal to the greatest population of people. It is for the same reasons, for example, politicians being politically motivated to win majority votes, and oftentimes have to appeal to the general public. Even though resources will be slightly worse on our side, which we're willing to accept the trade-off, oftentimes it ensures accessibility of everyone on the ground, as opposed to privately owned corporations. Only rich people can afford the rich. Well, the idea of this utilitarian state of public services is the most equal way to govern the public sector and everyone in this country is struggling economically, and the private incentive is structurally unnecessary, right? When you look at healthcare sectors, what they need is the accessibility of drugs, of medicine, not to capitalize on things like aesthetics, etc. The imbalance of interest on side proposition is why the progress of resources will often diverge in all directions, and it's less focused on our side. On our side, the quality of resources is the same, but if quality of resources does improve, it improves for everyone. There's more federal satisfaction for everyone on the ground, and there's a clear path for development to strive for. Right? Privatization, on the other hand, is harmful because it is an unnecessary privilege in which we're unsure to the extent of which it actually benefits society. Oftentimes, when different railway organizations, for instance, collaborate, they'll be very messy. They will be logistically fragmented, right? It hinders the ability to actually efficiently mobilize the quality of resources on their side. So, onto some major comparisons of private monopoly versus state monopoly. Private companies can actively strip the capacity for the state to regulate production, according to how the state does not have any incentive to do so. Profit motives are bred directly on-site proposition, and this means that there is less robust public legislation, etc. On our side, there is slow but collective progress in infrastructure that can sustain itself in the future, and this offers the stability that we get in order to achieve things like FDIs. So we have more incentives for growth on our side as opposed to on-site proposition, which is why we believe that in the context of this debate in a developing country, we deserve to win this debate.